Hello and welcome. I'm James Azimoha. You're watching AnewZ. Let's see your headlines. Putin vows retaliation after accusing Ukraine of hitting student dormitory. The World Health Organization raises Ebola risk level in DRC to very high as cases continue to surge. And at least 90 dead in Chinese coal mine explosion. Now, Russia and Ukraine have traded conflicting accounts following a deadly strike in the Russian-controlled city of Satrobilsk as tensions escalate at both military and diplomatic levels.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has accused Ukraine of carrying out what he described as a deliberate attack on a student dormitory in the Russian-controlled city of Starobilsk in eastern Ukraine. According to Moscow, 6 people were killed, dozens injured, and several others remain missing after drones struck the building overnight. Putin rejected suggestions that the damage may have been caused by Russian air defense systems and said the strike had specifically targeted the site in multiple waves. He also instructed Russia's defense ministry to prepare proposals for a possible response.
The Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been instructed to inform international organizations and the international community about this crime. But of course, we understand that in such cases, statements from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs alone are not enough. Therefore, the Russian Ministry of Defense has been ordered to submit its proposals. And now, I would like to ask everyone to rise and honor the memory of the victims.
The incident later triggered an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council, where Russia and Ukraine exchanged accusations over the attack. Ukraine strongly rejected the accusations, calling them part of what it described as a Russian disinformation campaign.
And now let us turn to the absurd accusations of the Russian representative regarding an alleged incident in Starobilsk that we just heard today. There is no independent verification of all these baseless claims, as once again was confirmed by our distinguished briefers. So everything we hear today about Starobilsk is a pure propaganda show, nothing else. Such false accusations belong to a textbook disinformation campaign from Moscow designed to deflect from its own war crimes and manipulate international public opinion. Ukraine only targets legitimate military targets and facilities used for military purposes.
While we await answers,
The United States called for an immediate ceasefire, while UNICEF warned that children continue to suffer the consequences of the war, while both Russia and Ukraine deny deliberately targeting civilians in the conflict.
Now, Lebanon's health authorities say the death toll from Israeli strikes since March 2nd has risen to over 3,000, with more than 9,000 people wounded. At least 11 more people were killed in an overnight and Friday strike across southern Lebanon, including paramedics, rescue workers, and a child, according to Lebanese sources. Separately, Hezbollah said it launched a drone attack targeting an Israeli artillery position in the border town of Adeseh. Now, Mexico and the European Union signed a long-delayed free trade agreement on Friday, expanding their economic ties as both sides seek to reduce dependence on the United States and shield themselves from Trump tariffs. The deal updates a 2000 accord by adding services, including digital trade, investment, and agricultural products. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum signed the pact in Mexico City alongside European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa during the first Mexico-EU summit in more than a decade. Mexico says the agreement could raise the exports to the EU from $24 billion to $36 billion annually by 2030.
The goal here is simple. We want to create even more jobs and value on both sides. With swift ratification, tariffs on virtually all Mexican agri-food exports to Europe will disappear. Imagine the opportunities. European companies, drawn by Mexico's talent and dynamism, already support more than 5 million jobs here, and there is much more to come.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has met Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi as Washington tries to repair ties strained by tariffs and energy disputes. According to a U.S. summary, Rubio told Modi that American energy exports could help diversify India's supplies, while warning that Iran should not disrupt global energy markets. The talks also covered stalled trade negotiations and U.S. efforts to reduce India's reliance on Russian oil. Modi called for conflicts to be resolved through dialogue and diplomacy, while Rubio invited him to visit the White House. Now, the Ebola outbreak in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo is raising growing international concern as health officials warn that containing the virus is becoming increasingly challenging.
The World Health Organization has upgraded the public health risk posed by the latest Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo from high to very high at the national level. Health officials say the outbreak, linked to the rare Bundibugyo strain of the virus, continues to spread in eastern Congo, where conflict, displacement and weak infrastructure are complicating containment efforts. According to the WHO, there are now more than 80 confirmed Ebola cases, including several deaths, alongside hundreds of suspected infections and fatalities still under investigation. The Bundibugyo strain currently has no approved vaccine or specific treatment. The United Nations has now allocated up to $60 million in emergency funding to support the response across the region. Officials say the crisis requires more than medical treatment alone, warning that transport, food supplies and humanitarian access are all critical to containing the outbreak.
Containing Ebola requires more than treatment alone. WFP says it requires food, it requires access, it requires transport, and it requires logistics so frontline teams can move fast and affected families can safely follow public health measures.
The outbreak is also beginning to affect daily life and livelihoods in border communities. At the crossing between Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, movement restrictions linked to the outbreak have disrupted trade and left many residents unable to work. For disabled transport workers who rely on cross-border trade to survive, the closure has created growing economic hardship.
Our work is here at the border, and it is this border that sustains the lives of disabled people. When it is closed, we are all stranded. It is this work that sends our children to school, provides us with a home, gives us a livelihood, and even the chance to buy lotion. We shouldn't have to go begging in the streets when life is so hard these days. But as we aren't crossing the border, we're deprived of our earnings from simply transporting goods to the other side. We don't gain much from it.
Residents also warn that many families can no longer access savings held in neighbouring Rwanda as restrictions remain in place. The World Health Organization says the risk of wider regional spread remains high due to population movement and the densely populated nature of the affected areas.
Now, the World Health Organization says 12 hantavirus cases linked to the cruise ship MV Honduras have now been confirmed, with 3 deaths reported since the outbreak began. WHO Director General said the latest case involved a crew member who left the ship in Spain before being repatriated to the Netherlands and placed in isolation. More than 600 contacts across 30 countries are still being monitored, while health officials continue efforts to locate several high-risk contacts. Now to China. At least 90 people have died after a gas explosion at a coal mine in northern China, in one of the country's deadliest mining disasters in years.
At least 90 people have died after the blast at the Liushengyu coal mine in Qinyuan County in Shaanxi province. The explosion happened late on Friday, when 247 workers were on duty underground. More than 200 people were later brought safely to the surface. Rescue operations are still underway, while local emergency officials say the cause of the explosion remains under investigation. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called on authorities to spare no effort in treating the injured and carrying out search and rescue work. State media says executives of the company responsible for the mine have been detained. China has sharply reduced coal mine fatalities since the early 2000s through tighter safety rules and improved practices. But gas explosions, flooding, and other accidents remain serious risks in the sector. The Liushengyu mine disaster is now one of the deadliest reported in China in the past decade.
Now, still in China, Beijing is hosting another round of high-level diplomacy, while with Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif arriving in China for talks and an anniversary event. Serbian President Alexander Vučić is also expected there as China continues to position itself at the center of major international engagements. AnewZ's Abu Hayat Javarova sent us this report earlier.
Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif arrived in Beijing on Saturday for an official visit to China that will last until May 26 and coincide with the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations between China and Pakistan. During the visit, Sharif is scheduled to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Qiang to discuss bilateral relations, areas of mutual interest and ongoing cooperation. He will also attend official anniversary events and visit Zhejiang province in eastern China. Chinese officials describe the two countries as long-standing strategic partners, highlighting continued coordination on regional and international issues, as well as progress on joint projects such as the China and Pakistan Economic Corridor. At the same time, Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić is expected to arrive in Beijing on May 24 for his first official state visit to China, which will continue through May 28. Xi and Li are expected to meet Vučić separately to discuss bilateral ties, regional developments and international cooperation. Earlier this month, the Chinese capital also welcomed Russian President Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump, reinforcing Beijing's growing role as a hub for high-level international diplomacy. Abu Hayat Jafarova, AnewZ, Beijing, China.
Now, the Trump administration has released another batch of declassified UFO files, adding fresh fuel to decades of speculation surrounding unexplained aerial sightings. The materials include videos and reports from several countries. However, officials say there is still no evidence of extraterrestrial life.
About the UFOs?
The US Defense Department released a second batch of declassified UFO files on Friday, part of a disclosure push ordered by President Donald Trump. The material includes videos, documents, and reports on what the US Defense Department describes as unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs. The footage shows luminous objects near Karaganda International Airport in Kazakhstan, a reported UAP over Syria, and 4 objects passing through the frame in footage listed as Iran. Other clips show unidentified objects moving past aircraft, over water, above clouds, and across mountainous areas. Some videos were enhanced or slowed down to show details such as apparent acceleration, possible changes in shape, or movement through the sky. According to the Pentagon, one of the 222 files includes 116 pages linked to sightings near a top-secret facility in Sandia, New Mexico, between 1948 and 1950. That file refers to 209 reported sightings of green orbs, disks, and fireballs near the military base. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the records had long fueled speculation, adding that it was time for the American people to see them. But experts say the material offers no conclusive evidence of alien technology or extraterrestrial life. The first batch was made public on May 8th, with the disclosure process now continuing under the Trump administration.
Now we'll take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. Now, the United States Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed visited an AnewZ Service Center in Azerbaijan and was briefed on the country's public service and social innovation model. Chairman of the State Agency for Public Service and Social Innovations, Ovi Mekdiev, highlighted the international recognition of the AnewZ model, including several UN awards and its implementation in different countries. Officials also emphasized the cooperation agreement between Azerbaijan and the UN aimed at promoting the AnewZ service model. During the visit, Amina Mohammed also toured the Innoland Incubation Center, Mobile AnewZ Service, and the Abad Public Legal Entity.
The UN has a framework for sustainable development, and Goal 16 is about strong institutions. And what this provides is a one-stop service for those institutions to help citizens. So you see here a demonstration of the social contract between government and the citizens, and providing a space to come and access what your basic rights are, to an ID card, to pensions, to a lot of the services that we saw here. And I think that this is something that can be shared, and that's why the United Nations exists, is not just to support countries, but for us to share that knowledge and to see how we can work in others. Now, I see the AnewZ centers already sharing its knowledge in many countries, and I think that this organizes with a sense of accountability and transparency how the state deals with its citizens. So it's very impressive. Impressive that you have so many young people, that you're using technology, and you're using it in a way in which you can take the services to people as well as they can come to you.
Now, the Nizami Ganjavi International Center has hosted a formal reception in Baku to announce the 14th Global Baku Forum and present the latest edition of its Global Policy Analysis Journal. The event brought together senior international officials, diplomats, former heads of states, and global policy experts to discuss sustainable development, international governance, and inclusive urbanization amid growing global challenges. During the event, organizers announced plans to expand cooperation between the Nizami Ganjavi International Center and UN Habitat through a future memorandum of understanding.
Thinkers and decision makers.
They asked me to look into, as I said, to they call it, one of the member of the NGIC jokingly said that you are the secular Maimuna, meaning that secular economy, secular from local to global to capital and to private sector. So I would like to share how can we translate the global policy into the national policy and strategy, and into the local that impact the people.
And if we are together, if we are thinking together, if we are accepting together the humanity, and really seeing how even in small steps, incrementally, we can deal with certain aspects of the reality that we are facing, this is very helpful. As a leader, I appreciate to have this company. It is very.
Now, the nomination of Russian-Armenian businessman Rubin Vardanyan for the 2026 Václav Havel Human Rights Prize is drawing sharp criticism. Analysts say the move raises questions about his record in Karabakh, his financial past, and alleged links to Russian influence networks.
A group of international activists and former humanitarian award recipients has nominated Rubin Vardanyan for the 2026 Václav Havel Human Rights Prize, an award presented annually by Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe in recognition of contributions to human rights and civil society. The nomination cites Vardanyan's involvement in humanitarian initiatives and his so-called support for Armenians living in Karabakh. Several of the signatories are themselves recipients of the Aurora Humanitarian Award, a project co-founded by Vardanyan in 2015. But the nomination has prompted strong criticism. Critics argue that Vardanyan was not a neutral humanitarian figure, but a political actor who helped sustain separatism in Karabakh and obstruct dialogue efforts with Azerbaijan. They also point to statements in which Vardanyan questioned coexistence between Azerbaijanis and Armenians, Rhetoric, they say, contradicts the image of a peace advocate. Vardanyan moved to Karabakh in 2022 after renouncing his Russian citizenship and later became the so-called state minister of the former separatist administration. His arrival fueled speculation that Moscow was seeking to preserve influence in the South Caucasus. Azerbaijani authorities accused Vardanyan of financing illegal armed groups and violating the country's laws. He was detained in September 2023 while attempting to leave for Armenia. Vardanyan was later convicted on charges including terrorism financing, participation in illegal armed formations, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Ukraine also sanctioned Vardanyan over alleged support for Russian aggression. His name was added to Ukraine's Mirotvorets database, and critics in Kyiv have sharply condemned his nomination for a European Human Rights Award.
The news of Rubin Vardanyan's nomination for the Václav Havel Prize, a man convicted by an Azerbaijani court, including for terrorism, deeply concerns me. It's not even about the nomination. It's about doubts about the ability of the international humanitarian community to understand ethical criteria and establish ethical boundaries. I am currently in Sumy, a border city that is shelled daily by Russian troops. People are being crippled. People are dying. Our homes are being destroyed. This is happening in part because of the actions of people like Rubin Vardanyan. I believe the time has come to return to the true legacy of Václav Havel, an outstanding politician and playwright, and in particular to his assertion of the ethical responsibility of politics. It is precisely this ethical responsibility, these ethical boundaries that, in my profound belief, should guide the organization of the Václav Havel Prize.
His critics also point to his financial past. OCCRP investigations linked Vardanyan's former investment bank, Troika Dialog, to a major money laundering network known as the Troika Laundromat. The investigation alleged that billions of dollars moved through offshore accounts linked to Russian elites. Vardanyan has denied wrongdoing, but the allegations continue to follow him internationally. Critics have also questioned the role of PACE itself. In 2019, reports within European institutions raised concerns over alleged money laundering schemes linked to Troika Dialog. Critics now question how a figure associated with those allegations could be considered for one of Europe's leading human rights prizes. The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe has not commented publicly on the criticism surrounding the nomination.
All right, let's bring in Yulia O'Connell, a member of Dignitas, join us from New York. Thank you for joining us, Yulia. Let's get right into it. What is behind this nomination?
As we know, Václav Havel Prize is a prize to honor the people who did outstanding job in protection of human rights. And the word is outstanding. And what we do know, as this piece showed very, very well, what we know about Rubin Vardanyan is that he is basically an oligarch who made his money in a Russian financial and political field. He is deeply associated with Troika Dialog that has multiple flaws in their offshores, multiple financial flaws. He is also being a state minister of Nagorno-Karabakh, which is the territory that Russia militarily held. And when that was not successful, obviously Azerbaijan, just like in any European country, does punish those who lead the separatism. So what as a bigger question is not about specifically Rubin Vardanyan, is more about the institutions in Europe, European institutions either turning a blind eye or not being able to learn or understand the difference or distinguish between real dissidents, real people who fight for human rights, and those are plenty in Russian jails, for example, and people who actors who are political actors for Russia, for Russian regime. And those examples we've seen, quite many, where Russia used their financial tentacles, humanitarian, soft power, but it's still a part of the Russian empire regime, and that would, a lot of times European organizations fail to understand. When they glorify Alex Navalny, who has been fighting against Russian regime, against Putin, but he was not fighting against Russian imperialistic ambitions.
Right.
He did not, for example, condemn annexation of Crimea. When Anna Netrebko, who is super close to Putin and financed occupation in Donbass and help Putin to promote his helps Putin to promote his power through soft power, through opera. This is also has to be noticed, recognized. So this is a bigger picture and a bigger question for European institutions that allow this type of Russian tentacles to infiltrate in their political and economical field.
Yulia, that takes me to my next question. Does putting his name forward risk damaging the credibility of the Václav Havel Human Rights Prize?
It does damage credibility, of course. If you, do not understand how to learn and see the difference, if you don't do enough back check, if you don't look at the background of this person, if you do not fully understand the way Russian operates on European political and financial, economical field, it's undermining the prestige of this award. It's definitely a damage in the prestige of that award. A lot of other real fighters for human rights might not look at that award as as far as legitimate, or refuse to accept that. So yes, this is very damaging. It should not happen.
Now, when a figure is linked to politics, money, and conflict, where should human rights institutions draw the line?
The institutions is there to recognize, right? Their job to show the world that this person have done something outstanding, something that beyond regular human, actions. So we have not seen what specifically Rubin Vardanyan have done that he would deserve it. So far, we've seen that he was part of the Russian imperialistic system that supported by the Russian dictatorship regime. So where the people are oppressed more than anywhere in the world. So we want to understand what Rubin Vardanyan did in the field controlled by Russia, that he would deserve this type of prize.
Now, that was Yulia O'Connell joining us from New York. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Now, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan on Friday met with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on the sidelines of a NATO foreign ministers meeting in Sweden as preparations ramp up for an upcoming NATO leaders summit in Ankara. The meeting was held amid growing debate within the alliance over defense spending, military production, and long-term support for Ukraine. Our correspondent has more.
Friday's meeting between Hakan Fidan and Marco Rubio appears to have focused largely on the NATO summit that Ankara will host this July, a gathering expected to shape the alliance's future strategic direction at a sensitive moment for transatlantic security. According to the U.S. State Department, Fidan and Rubio discussed defense investment commitments, inter-alliance cooperation, and regional security issues, including the conflict in Ukraine and tensions in the Middle East. The Turkish side, for its part, has released only limited details about the closed-door discussion. But Ankara has been signaling for days that it wants the upcoming summit to emphasize alliance cohesion at a time when NATO is facing geopolitical pressures on multiple fronts. Those pressures include continued uncertainty over the war in Ukraine, instability in the Middle East, and ongoing discussions over the future U.S. military posture in Europe. The Ankara summit is also expected to focus heavily on defense spending targets and NATO's military industrial capacity, areas where Turkey increasingly wants to position itself as a key contributor. At this week's talks in Sweden, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte praised Turkey's burgeoning defense industrial sector, particularly its expanding manufacturing and production capabilities. For Ankara, the upcoming summit will be more than just a diplomatic event. It will also give Turkey an opportunity to showcase its strategic importance within NATO at a time when the alliance is reassessing its long-term security priorities. Turkey last hosted a NATO summit in Istanbul back in 2004. This is Adam Morrow for AnewZ in Istanbul, Turkey.
Now, authorities in Armenia have detained 21 people as part of an investigation into alleged vote buying and violations of restrictions on charitable activities during political campaigns. The criminal cases are being handled by the Anti-Corruption Committee of Armenia. Local media reported that the detainees were to remain under arrest as a preventive measure. The detentions were carried out over the past 2 days amid an ongoing anti-corruption investigation. Now, as global trade routes continue to shift, CIS countries are looking to strengthen overland connections. Transport, trade and regional cooperation topped the agenda at a meeting of heads of states or heads of government in Ashgabat. Al-Faiza Kalamuzina has more.
CIS countries are looking to strengthen land trade routes as global supply chains continue to change. That was one of the main outcomes of a meeting of the Commonwealth Council of Heads of Government in Ashgabat, where member states signed a plan to improve links between key transport corridors across the region. The issue dominated discussions between prime ministers and senior officials from across the Commonwealth of independent states. The focus was on trade, logistics and how to make transport faster and more reliable at a time when many countries are paying closer attention to overland routes. The talks took place in Turkmenistan, a country seen as an important transit point in the region. Major Eurasian routes intersect here, linking east-west connections with the north-south corridor, which is becoming increasingly important for regional trade. Delegations also discussed the future of the mining and metals sector, including plans for digital modernization, environmental concerns in uranium mining areas. The talks also reflected growing economic ties inside the bloc. Kazakhstan says trade with CIS countries reached $38.4 billion last year and rose by more than 17% in the first quarter of this year. Turkmenistan, which hosted the meeting, reported a 30% increase in trade with CIS partners in the first 3 months of 2026. The meeting ended with Karaganda in Kazakhstan and Minsk in Belarus selected as CIS youth capitals for the next 2 years. CIS heads of government are expected to meet again in Moscow this December. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, AnewZ.
All right, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to AnewZ.